is too unscientific to be used. It is not the pain that is to be killed. It is the cause of the disease that is to be enlightened. And it is the behavior that is to be rectified. And before doing it, if we begin pain killing, that means we are encouraging ourselves into the wrong way of living and continuing it for a long time. And the process speedily leads us to the grave. This is the scope of the subject of Ayurveda. It teaches us how to behave from morning to night. It teaches us purity of the physical and the mental vehicles, purity of the etheric and the astral vehicles, and our behavior to maintain this purity, our behavior with others, our behavior with food, drink, work, sleep, rest and sex. This is what Ayurveda teaches us. I think some of you know that yoga is a part of Ayurveda. Though some people are teaching it as an independent science, we should remember that it is only a part of a bigger science and not an independent science at all. Just as the Bhagavad Gita is not an independent book, it is only 18 chapters of a bigger book. Similarly, yoga is not an independent science. It is part of Ayurveda. So, the scope of the subject Ayurveda teaches us that we should rectify our constitution by a practical way of applying some good behavior and cure diseases by using some food substances. For example, milk, honey, etc. and some oils. For example, sesame oil and coconut oil. The various methods of using these substances to cure various diseases. For example, I will give you a practical example which proves the use of Ayurveda. Some of you know a disease called hemicrania. That is what is called migraine of one side. A very obstinate and very teasing type of disease. It is one of the diseases that is challenging allopathy. The allopath has nothing to do for it except bending his head. Just as he has nothing for diabetes, just as he has nothing for cancer, he has nothing for insomnia, he has nothing to offer for depressions, nothing to offer for nervousness, so also he has nothing to offer for hemicrania. There is a sure and radical cure, the process of which includes no medicine at all, and which you can apply to any one of your friends and find the results, and find that they are stunning and infallible. I will tell you how to do it. In the night, take a silver container and place 20 ounces of buffalo milk in it. And buffalo means you have to find out if you want a remedy. In the hot countries we have buffaloes, and you will have buffaloes in zoos. Boiled milk taken into a silver container and some brown rice cooked placed in that milk. And a drop of sour cream is to be placed in it. And then 1 pinch of the powder of dry ginger. Cover it in the night. Take in the morning and have it as the first feed before breakfast. It should be eaten before sunrise. This should be done daily for 40 days. Within the first 1 or 2 weeks, the migraine disappears, and if one is patient enough to complete the whole course for 40 days, which is a little bit difficult with the Occidentals. If one cares to do it, there is no migraine at all, at least in that reincarnation. You can try it. Many of the Ayurvedic principles are like this. In certain cases, you are asked to mix cow's milk and honey with warm water and drink it in the morning as the first feed before sunrise for 40 days. People of cardiac weakness, which is not of a congenital type, can try this and then go to their cardiologist doctor after 40 days and then try to understand what a cure through food materials is. Similarly, there is the mixture of honey and lemon juice. 1 tablespoon of honey with the juice of half a citron dissolved in 20 ounces of warm water, taken as the first feed in the morning before sunrise. It cures all the gastric and digestive troubles of both the types. That means the troubles of the acidic stomach and the troubles of the alkaline stomachs also. Generally, substances that cure the acid stomach, substances that cure the troubles of the acid stomach prove much painful to the alkaline stomachs. And substances that cure the alkaline stomach prove much painful to the acid stomachs. But this compound cures either dyspepsia or acidity. And when healthy people daily take this compound lifelong, their health will not be disturbed by any minor causes or infection or contagions, and they will live an active, healthy life until the last moments. These are only a few examples of Ayurveda. Many of the principles exist as instructions in our daily life. For example, when to wake up in the morning, how to pre-plan the routine of the whole day within the first 5 minutes after waking up, and then applying oil to the body, and everyone making a process of self-massaging which invigorates the circulation and also necessitates many postures of the body. For example, if we pay something and go to get a physical massage, we have no advantage of all the postures that are required when we attempt a self-massage. And then about the process of cleaning the teeth, nose, eyes, ears, and the necessity of at least 1 wash of the whole body a day, and daily change of garments. Like this, from morning to evening, a procedure is prescribed in Ayurveda. And when the procedure is followed by a perfectly healthy fellow, who is born to healthy parents and who has no hereditary diseases, he lives with the same health until the last moments and lives very brisk and active. And if a sickly person begins to follow this procedure, and if his sickness belongs to a hereditary nature which is too deep to be cured, then all his sufferings will be gradually rectified and his sickness arrested though not cured. Even though the doctor is not successful to cure the fellow from his hereditary disease conditions, he lives quite healthy for all practical purposes because the disease is arrested into the background until the last moment. He lives a long lease of life, and only in the end he leaves his body quite normally without any strain. That means either the health is perfectly maintained or the incurable disease is permanently arrested for life. It is for this purpose that Ayurveda is discovered. And about 75% of Ayurvedic cures, they include a systematic and scientific use of food materials and not medicines. And when real treatment is required, there are medicines that are prescribed in Ayurveda also, and the medicines are divided into three main groups. The first group are called remedies, that is, those who rectify the health. The second group are called rejuvenators. The third group are called regenerators of tissues. So, the whole scope of treatment is divided into three groups mainly. The first group is medical rectification. The second group is rejuvenation of the tissues. The third group is regeneration of the tissues. The first group are called in Sanskrit Aushadhas. The second group is called Vajikarana. I will note the names here. The first group are called Aushadhas. The second group are called Vajikaranas. The third group are called Rasayanas. So, the treatment is of these three types in Ayurveda. And another interesting aspect in Ayurveda is it has the theory of the vital body just as the homeopathy has. The human constitution is divided mainly into three layers. The layer of matter, the layer of force, and the layer of consciousness. And the second aspect, which we call force, is called prana in Ayurveda. The one center is called creative center. The cells in the body for the various tissues. This is taking place every moment. The second activity, it is destroying the cells every second and making a release of energy for us to live. For example, the tissues are being built by the creative activity, and the process of combustion in the lungs is being conducted by the second activity. And also the digestive process is also caused by the second activity. And there is a third activity which is causing pulsation. This pulsation is causing the alternation of expansion and contraction in the nerves and the muscles of our body. It is what is called peristalsis. It is due to this function to enable the blood to circulate properly. So, these are the three functions of the vital body according to Ayurveda. The first activity is called kapha in Sanskrit. The second activity is called pitta. And the third activity is called vata. These are the Ayurvedic terminology for the three activities. And an equilibrium of these three functions is what is called health. And a disturbance in one of these functions automatically creates a disturbance in the activity of the constitution. And it is what is called disease. So, according to Ayurveda, there are three groups of real diseases. Diseases produced by the defect in the first center, defects in the second center, and defects in the third center. The three defects produce three different types of diseases. For example, the defect of the first activity produces outgrowths and cysts and polyps, and also putting up flesh and weight, and also troubles with bronchus and phlegm and mucus. A defect in the second center, that is the destructive center, causes rapid loss of weight, emaciation and temperatures, cough and consumptive type of diseases like tuberculosis, etc. Tuberculosis is only one of the consumptive diseases. The defect in the third center results in a loss of peristalsis of a part of the body, results in a loss of peristalsis of some part of the body, resulting in losing the capacity to pulsate. Generally, there is wind formation in the stomach, bloating, and incapacity of the bladder to expel urine, and laziness of the kidneys, and accumulation of fluids in parts of body, for example, edematic diseases, etc. And in some other cases, the nerves lose the capacity of movement. Various types of nerve and muscle paralysis, loss of sensation, and death of parts of the body are caused by the disturbance of the third center. This is only a reference. There are many, many details about each group of diseases. So, these are two examples of the scope of Ayurvedic science. I have given one example about the food materials used as medicines. Another example of classifying the medicines into three types. And a third example of understanding the vital body and its functions. Beyond this, we cannot do in one lecture. Now, let us try to have a few words about the scope of healing. Healing is understood in the modern age as spiritual healing. The number of people who begin to heal has enormously increased during the past 2 decades, for the simple reason that the age in which we are living is an age of service. Automatically, the instinct to serve humanity increases more and more. We have well entered into the Aquarian age. And one of the layers into which our awareness enters speedily is service. Those who still belong to the previous age, that is Piscean age, they are not able to understand this fact, and they are criticizing and making a fun of the healers of the modern age. They are speaking very lightly and humorously about people who try to heal, for the simple reason they belong to the previous age, and they are not able to readily adapt to the changing ideology. It is our responsibility to encourage the art of healing and regulate the process of healing through scientific methods. standardize and establish the science with simple and practical methods that are infallible and that render results as surely as anything. These are the limitations and the scope of the science of healing. And we should also remember that it forms a part of the total medical science. Rather, the science of medicines also forms a part of the total healing science. And the so-called various systems of medicine that exist today will be scientifically understood in the future as the different chapters of the same science. Since we are now living in a political century, we wish to understand each as a different science with a compartmental and political mind. In the future, the next generation has no necessity to have a political way of understanding things. The whole science will be understood in a holistic way, and where the various systems of medicine, for example, allopathy, homeopathy, Ayurveda, etc., will be properly understood as the different chapters of the same subject, same science. So also spiritual healing. We have many hundreds of books written on spiritual healing and thrown upon the heads of the modern readers. Some are practical and some are highly intellectual and only theoretical. And some are scientific while some are sweet and philosophical. It is inevitable that any science has fake literature in the beginning. That does not mean that the science is fake, but we should be able to discriminate and have a selective way of reading.